Thank you for joining us for an episode of the official podcast of Lancaster Public Library, Checked Out. I'm Theodore.
And I'm Amanda.
And we're here with you with a tiny bit of a format change this month. We have an interview that will be in a separate episode, a special guest, and it went a little long, and as they tend to do, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, we both have the gift of gab, and we realized our episodes have gotten a teensy bit lengthy.
Tiny bit.
Switching it up a bit.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to put this one out the week that you see it. The very next week is when you will see the actual interview. And I think we'll be doing something like that going forward as well, just kind of splitting up the bits and pieces. So it's a bit more bite-sized as well. So with all of that out of the way, is there any other administrative tasks that we need to get out of the way?
I don't think so. Let's get right into what we're reading.
Yeah. So what are you reading right now?
Okay. So I feel like we've switched roles here because you have a nonfiction and a fiction book going this month.
I do, but one's work related. So
I guess that's fair.
Exactly.
But I am still in the middle of the nonfiction book from last month because I've just been in, we were talking about this the other day. I've been in the mood for a good story. Mm-hmm. So I've just been coasting through novels and have not made any progress on the other one. So I'm highlighting what I'm currently reading in the fiction space now. And then I picked my other top 2 fiction books from the past month because I had a hard time narrowing it down. I'm like, okay, I'll try to stick to 3 books.
That's fair.
So my current read is Betty Smith's Tomorrow Will Be Better. Now, I am a huge fan of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Okay. It's one of my favorite books, but I've never read any of her other novels. So I thought I'd start with this one, and it's really good so far. Okay. It's from a different time, but it's still just such a sweet picture, just like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn was, of life in Brooklyn at a time before. I have family in Brooklyn now, and it's definitely different than it was back in the day. This is still very much immigrant communities and people living in poverty. So the main character in this is a young woman who's, got the goals of being a wife and starting a family and is just working her job in a mailroom out of high school, but it's interwoven with all kinds of other characters in her community and telling little bits of their stories.
That's cool. And not an undercut or an expensive pizza shop in sight?
Not a single one. Nope.
Yeah. I know I shouldn't say that because I have an undercut, but
Calling yourself out there. Yeah. Yeah. Not so pretentious in this. But
okay. Very nice. Very nice.
All right. But 2 of the other ones from this past month that I really enjoyed, they were just different for me a little bit. I guess I shouldn't say too far outside because one was definitely still historical fiction, but I read The Butcher's Daughter, which is Mrs. Lovett's tale. So if you've ever watched Sweeney Todd, this is supposedly the story of Mrs. Lovett who was baking people into pies, but it's a historical fiction / horror / thriller mystery story, kind of genre blends a little bit. I do actually think that you would like this one. It's all framed as a young female journalist in the late 1800s writing to someone that she suspects is Mrs. Lovett, who's locked up in a priory and kind of observed by the nuns to make sure that she doesn't escape. And it's someone who does, spoiler alert, turn out to be Mrs. Lovett telling her story that I know, I'm sorry, but I like the way it's framed through those letters and a dossier of.
So is it consistently through letters?
Yes. Yes. It is all, it's purely epistolary with some documents like posters or police reports thrown in. So really cool structure. And
on that kind of blend, there's a book called The Historian
Oh,
And I can see the author's name, and we'll link it in the description because unless you can think of
does
the
this
name
have
right now.
some sort of vampire
It is
lore?
Dracula.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's the
I know
same kind of
I can see
concept.
the cover too, the sideways
Yes.
face. Yeah.
And it's the same kind of situation where it's the same blending of genres actually, and it's entirely through letters, newspaper clippings, I believe reports from like the coroner as well. And it was just a blind read at one point. I think someone recommended it, and it's fantastic. I know I would like that then.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to have to check out the historian because I ended up loving this. It was just a really entertaining story. It is a little bit gory at parts, so if you're sensitive to that, it's not the read for you. But
yeah, I mean, based on the cover,
the butcher's
and,
daughter,
and what she does,
the treatment of both
yeah,
humans and animals at different points, because she is literally a butcher's daughter at the beginning of her life. That her poor sad tale. You understand through. I don't want to give even more spoilers, but you understand by the end of it, even if she is a cannibal, she's a horrible person. How she got to that point. I liked that historical fiction angle of sympathy for a female character of facing an extreme version of issues at the time, but
still
how
like
she she became the infamous Miss Lovett.
Yeah, and somehow like the fact that the author can build the sympathy for a character like that is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mention the treatment of certain animals and things like that, and I find that in horror, or if I'm just watching a TV show. I was watching Parts Unknown last night, and he was in Morocco, and they were slaughtering a chicken. It was free range, lived a good life. Yeah, exactly, lived a good life. But I was like, that was the one point where I was like, all right, I'm gonna look over here for a minute. I just
chicken comes in packages at the grocery store.
Yeah, right.
It's just with
like
feathers
that.
on it. Yeah.
So yeah, all right, I like it. I like
cool. Very last one is The Book Eaters. This is, I don't know if I'd call it magical realism. It is a fantasy book, but this is about a group of supernatural beings called the Book Eaters that live in kind of this aristocratic society, very like closed door. It's called the Families in England. And they literally live off of books. They consume them just like humans would food, and they absorb all of the knowledge from those books. Any written documents, actually. They can eat a bus schedule books. And know when the buses come and go. And I
kind of like that.
But every once in a while, a mind eater is born among them. That they live off human brains, and they absorb the knowledge and personality of the person they consume. One of the families has developed a drug that suppresses that hunger in the mind eaters, but then there's a big thing among the families, and the main character of the story is exiled when she has a mind eater son who now needs to live off people. There's a whole lot going on. It's hard to summarize the crazy plot of this book, but it's so different from what I normally read in the fantasy space, and it was just interesting. I did end up enjoying it.
Is this is this a recent book or?
Oh, I think it came out a few years ago.
Just because the mind eater part, both in name and in concept, reminds me a bit of Harry Potter and the Death Eaters.
You're totally right. I didn't think about that.
I just thought about that when you first told me about this book. I didn't really put those together, but
this is 2022, so pretty recent. But I can see the parallels there.
Interesting.
Living off the soul of someone, and
exactly.
them. And kind of a similar thing happens with the mind eaters, that sometimes the people live, but they're just a shell. They have no personality, no thoughts left, and if someone survives after her son eats them, she usually leaves them at a shelter in a hotel room somewhere that it wouldn't be surprising if someone was
Okay. I like it. That sounds interesting, and definitely outside of your normal
trying to expand my palette a little bit.
And how is the nonfiction book that you were reading going?
I mean, I love it. I still am really interested in the topic. my porch is fixed up now. I'm sitting outside. I think I
Yes.
just wanted some more like entertainment rather than
Blame you.
absorbing heavy war stories.
Yes. I mean, there's a time and place for it.
Yeah.
Usually the winter.
Yeah. So I read fiction about cannibalism instead.
Exactly. Yeah, that's that, as you do. It makes perfect sense.
All right. So what are you working on?
So actually, I took Amanda's suggestion from last month because it kind of lined up with everything that I've liked recently, including Wales itself. And it's called Whale Fall, which you probably already know, by Elizabeth O'Connor. And I won't go into like the brief synopsis of it again. And I don't want to turn this into a book discussion either. But what I will say is everything you said is spot on. Like it's very like in the Claire Keegan kind of pocket. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I really like about this that is a lot different is, and I was looking for it before because there is quite a few times where the lead character, Manod. I should really know that.
I listened to an interview with the author and replayed the moments that she says the name like 10 times, and I still question it. So
I know. I'm gonna get my Welsh card taken away. But I really like how, unlike Claire Keegan, there are moments, usually the really brief passages like this, because the book is kind of oddly laid out, and that you'll see there the margins are huge. And it's we kind of talked about the chapters are almost the months. Mm-hmm. And then there will be these really small passages like this that in some cases are, a character falling asleep and what they're thinking of before that. This passage here in particular is about when the whale of the aptly named Whale Fall, when the people on this island push it back into the sea and it rolls up onto another piece of land. And it's just absolutely beautiful and kind of haunting in those moments. And that's where I think she really, really diverges from like the Claire Keegan path of kind of this, not necessarily magical realism or anything, but this almost haunting supernatural element that I really, really have enjoyed so far. I also like the idea of this almost unmovable, immense, just massive form of a whale, at least to me. I guess the English student will come out for a bit. Being like this metaphor for this massive overhaul and change in culture and in standard society, like everything that's going on around this island that is changing, and you cannot avoid it. It is going to come. Your life is going to change, and you're going to have to face that and deal with it like they had to face this bad omen of this whale. Great mixture too so far of like some Welsh folk tales, a lot of interesting Welsh sayings in there, like you said, with all of the extra Y's and the D's and all of that. And I'm loving it so far. I will say, not set in the same place, but last year I read Clear. And again, we'll link it in the description because I forget the author's name.
I read it too, and now
she
I can't
is
think
Welsh,
either.
but it was in Scotland.
Yeah, and actually, I did not like Clear at all.
I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to.
Same. It was a big letdown for me.
Yeah, I actually really liked the first half.
Yes.
And then as the plot kind of progressed,
the ending is what got me, which made me a little nervous for this, and it completely did not disappoint in the same way Clear did.
But I feel like there's a little bit of a parallel there as well with the solicitor in Clear, who was coming from a well-developed part of England still into similar remote location in Scotland, and these two individuals in this book, a couple who were coming to document really how people live on this island like they're animals. And I've read a lot of Welsh history around this period, and then even a lot of fiction on the Welsh around this period, and it is just absolutely brutal how the English treated them. I totally understand the constant disdain from the Welsh, even, in the time I spent over there, for the English. They were, happy to see an American. Imagine that in 2026, but like genuinely happy because we weren't English.
Yeah.
And so we would be we'd be kind, or we wouldn't just tread on their land and do whatever we wanted. And that never made sense to me because I'm not from there. I've never lived there. But the more I've read about how things went over there, how they were treated, how Welsh was another term for a liar at one point, a Welsher. It makes a lot of sense. And this is brilliantly written, highly recommended. Good. Again. The other book I'm reading is, it's for work, because I manage our adult services 2-person department here, although we are adding a 3rd person. And so just to kind of get better insight into management and leadership, I've been reading How to Be a Good Leader When You've Never Had One. That is not a dig at anyone who works here. We have a lot of great leadership here. But the reason why this was recommended to me in particular was actually the back half of it. The first half, and I agree when I talked to our new director, Jill, is extremely autobiographical and kind of like what you expect from self-help and management and self-improvement kind of books. It's just a lot of me, which we've talked about helpful. That. We're not interested in it. I know it helps some people, but it's not for us. And it's by Mick Hunt. And the one part that I did enjoy, kind of a personality test, they all have their own. And this was the part that, I was told to look at. And it kind of describes these 4 different types of leaders. There's the apex. There's the, I'm going to pull that up because I'm going to forget. The apex, the igniter, the forge, and the nexus. And every time I take one of these, every single time, it doesn't matter what personality test I take, it's infuriating sometimes. I'm always the cheerleader. I'm the igniter. Which essentially in any of these that you read, whether it's, the working genius that we actually did as a management team at one point, essentially all of these words to say you're a cheerleader. And it's not wrong, but
you don't want to be a cheerleader anymore.
Well, yeah, I don't know. We'll work on it. But it actually has been insightful because one place I think most people are not great at is identifying their weaknesses. And a lot of these books, they usually don't even call them that. It's usually like your strengths and your areas of improvement. But it's actually pretty accurate as to where my weaknesses are, which sometimes can be like structure, which I've been working on a lot. I can get people excited. I can get people, bought in, but sometimes you're just a people person and you want to talk to people and make people happy, and you got to work on the other things. So.
I'm type A enough for both of us, so it usually works out okay.
It's funny because in other respects I am very type A. Brandy always makes fun of me about it because of like how I handle my hobbies and like all of my organizational habits and things like that. But
and to be a librarian to a certain point, you have to like organization. Everything in its place is kind of at the core of our job. So
exactly. But I could be a little aloof.
Well, I'm expecting big things now.
Oh boy,
as manager.
Right. I shouldn't have read this book. But yeah, so that's what I'm reading right now.
Cool.
And now that my garden's in order, I'm hoping to read a lot more because that's been taking up a lot of my time. So
nice.
Yeah, so it'll be good.
All right.
So that's actually, we're coming to the close of this episode. And like I said, it's because we have a pretty long form interview with, I mentioned Jill, it is the director of library services, Jill Westen. She's been a great addition to the team. You worked with Jill.
Yeah, I worked with Jill for a while at my previous library, and it's exciting to see her joining me over at LPL. And
exactly. And in the interview, it's so funny. She sent me an email later in the day because I think she used phrasing like she took Amanda, or she like something about like, essentially saying that she pushed you to go to LPL. And she's like, I didn't mean to word it like that. She didn't mean it like that. I promise you.
She followed me over here.
Exactly. So that just tells you how great Amanda is.
Well, I can't wait to hear that interview. I didn't get to sit in on the recording, so it'll be new to me too.
That's a good one. So all right. So thank you for joining us for this episode, and
we'll see you next week.
And check back in to checked out.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Bye.